The Christmas lights glowed on the porch, glittering against the icy night, but inside the dining room the warmth turned into fire and ice at the same time. I had just lifted my glass of water with trembling fingers when the words slipped from my lips. "I am pregnant." The silence that followed was louder than any storm. My dad's chair screeched against the hardwood as he stood face-twisting, voice exploding across the table. "Abort that bastard or you are dead to me!" The crystal glasses rattled. Guests shifted uncomfortably, staring into their plates. My mom froze by the kitchen doorway, holding a serving spoon mid-air. My sister Jessica smirked, her lipstick perfect, her eyes sparkling with triumph. Dad's hand grabbed my arm, fingers digging so hard I gasped, and before I could breathe another word, he dragged me across the polished floor through the hall lined with family portraits, out into the December night. The door slammed open with the force of his rage, and he hurled me into the snow. My body hit the frozen ground, the cold biting through my coat. I saw my mom's outline in the doorway, then her eyes turned away. Jessica's laugh followed me, sharp and cruel, her voice dripping with venom. "You will be broke in a year." Then the door shut, and I was no longer part of that family. I lay in the snow, the sting seeping through my skin until my bones felt like ice. The lights twinkled overhead, mocking me with their cheer. My chest rose and fell too quickly, panic choking me. I pressed both hands to my stomach, whispering words only I could hear. "You are mine, little one. I will not let them erase you." My teeth clattered, not just from the cold, but from the shattering realization that everything I had once called home had just rejected me. My dad's voice still echoed each word, searing into my memory. Dead to me. He had banished me as though I had never existed. The snow beneath me soaked my skirt, and I forced myself up, trembling. Behind the frosted glass, shadows moved as if nothing had happened. The party went on. Laughter rose again, glasses clinked, and I realized the world inside that house would keep spinning without me. I turned my back on it. I stumbled down Maple Ridge Drive, each breath a cloud of frost. My boots sank into the fresh snow and my body shook with every step. The streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement, and each shadow seemed like a reminder of what I had lost. My fingers ached from the cold as I held my coat shut. The baby inside me was the only reason I kept moving. I thought of Jessica's words. "You will be broke in a year." She wanted me gone, erased, humiliated. My dad had given her the gift of triumph while cutting me off from everything. I had no money, no plan, but I had resolve. Hours later, I sat in the corner booth of a diner that never closed. The waitress with tired eyes poured me coffee, her hands steady, her gaze filled with quiet sympathy. "Honey, you look frozen. Warm up a bit." I nodded, unable to speak, fingers clutching the mug as if it were the only warmth left in the world. I stared at the black coffee, bitter and strong, and thought of the bitter taste of betrayal. The jukebox in the corner played a slow tune, and the booth smelled of old leather. It was a place where no one knew me, where I could disappear. I sipped the coffee, each swallow sending heat back into my chest. The baby inside me fluttered like a reminder. I would not let my dad's words define my child's future. The weeks that followed blurred into a pattern of survival. I slept on Becca's couch, her small apartment in Milwaukee, a refuge after I confessed everything to her. On the phone, she did not hesitate. "Come here, Lauren. You will not do this alone." Becca, with her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and her nurse's uniform still smelling of antiseptic, handed me a blanket and said nothing more. That silence was not like my mom's silence. It was the silence of solidarity. I cried that first night, tears soaking into the pillow as I whispered promises to the life growing inside me. "I will make it. I will prove them wrong." Becca's apartment was cramped, one bedroom and a pull-out couch that groaned when I shifted at night, but it was a sanctuary. I woke each morning to the sound of her getting ready for work, coffee brewing, the smell of toast filling the air. She left me notes on the counter. "Pick up some fruit at the corner store. Call me if you need anything." I clung to those notes as though they were lifelines. I applied for jobs with trembling hands, my resume thin, my confidence shattered, but I kept at it. One afternoon, a receptionist at a dental office called me back. The pay was barely enough, but it was a step. The office smelled of fluoride and fresh paint. I sat behind the desk, answering phones, scheduling appointments. My hands shook the first week, but I steadied them. Each paycheck was a miracle, each dollar a defiance against Jessica's cruel prophecy. I paid Becca rent small amounts at first, then more when I could. She smiled, pride in her eyes. "You are stronger than you think." Pregnancy moved through me like a quiet storm. I carried my belly with pride and fear. At the clinic, I sat among other women, each of us with our stories. When the doctor placed the cold gel on my stomach and the sound of the heartbeat filled the room, my throat tightened. That thump-thump was proof of my resistance. I wiped my eyes and thought of my dad's face if he could hear it. He had wanted silence, but here was life loud and undeniable. The night I gave birth was a night of both agony and triumph. The hospital walls pressed in as I gripped the rails of the bed, sweat soaking my hair. Becca was there holding my hand, whispering encouragement. "Push, Lauren, you can do this." The cries of my son filled the room and tears blinded me. Aiden. His tiny body rested against my chest, his skin soft and warm, his breath fragile but strong. In that moment, all the snow, the shouting, the betrayal faded. I had created life. I had defied death. My dad's curse had no power here. The years after Aiden's birth were marked by struggle and resilience. I worked double shifts sometimes, coming home after midnight, collapsing onto the couch while Aiden slept in his crib. Becca helped when she could, her presence steady. Slowly, I saved enough to move into a small apartment of my own. The walls were thin, the paint chipped, but it was ours. I painted Aiden's room pale blue and taped his drawings to the fridge. Every smile he gave me was a reminder that I had chosen right. Each December, when lights appeared on porches, I felt the sting of memory. I avoided Maple Ridge Drive. I avoided Naperville altogether. Christmas was no longer about family around a table, but about survival, about proving to myself that we were more than the rejection of one man's fury. I lit a small tree in our apartment and watched Aiden's eyes glow as he hung. The ornaments. His laughter replaced the echo of my dad's voice. His joy drowned out Jessica's mockery. As Aiden grew, so did I. I enrolled in night classes, determined to build a better career. The textbooks were heavy, the hours long, but each page I read was a stone laid in the foundation of the life I was creating. When I finally earned my certificate and moved into a role managing the office at a family clinic, I stood taller. My paychecks carried more weight. I could buy Aiden new shoes without checking the price tag twice. I could stock the fridge with more than just bread and milk. I thought of my dad less, but when I did, the images were vivid. His face twisted in rage, his hand gripping my arm, his words slicing through the air. I thought of Jessica's smirk, her eyes dancing with cruel delight. "You will be broke in a year." The truth was, I had been broke for longer than a year. I had lived on ramen and secondhand coats, but I had never broken, and that was what mattered. One evening, Aiden came home with a school essay. He had written about resilience. He wrote, "My mom taught me that even when your family betrays you, you can build a new one with love and strength." I pressed the paper to my chest, tears sliding down my face. That essay was worth more than any apology I would never receive. It was proof that the generational curse stopped with me. Still, in the quiet hours of the night, when the house settled and the snow fell outside, I wondered if my dad ever thought of me. Did he replay his words? Did he regret the shove, the command, the banishment? Or did he still believe I was dead to him? I never knew. And I told myself it did not matter. Yet a part of me, small and stubborn, whispered that the story was not over. Snow had long melted by the time spring arrived in Milwaukee, but inside me the chill of that night lingered. I woke each morning to the creak of Becca's apartment floorboards and the smell of coffee drifting through the air, a reminder that survival had taken on a routine. My belly grew, my hands moving instinctively to rest there, as if shielding the life that depended on me. Each day carried the weight of proving that my dad's words would not define me. I was disowned, cut off, abandoned, but I was not broken. Every step was heavy with fear and yet lit with determination. I was learning that rebuilding life meant starting with nothing and carving out pieces of stability where none seemed to exist. The first months after leaving Naperville were the hardest. I woke often at night from dreams where my dad's voice thundered, his hand shoving me into the snow again, Jessica laughing behind him. I would wake drenched in sweat, listening for Aiden's heartbeat inside me, and whispering that we would be all right. In the mornings, I walked the streets searching for work, my shoes worn thin, my legs aching. Storefronts blurred together. Rejection piled up like the unpaid bills on Becca's counter. But I kept walking. I could not afford to stop. Each time I thought of Jessica's smug face, I clenched my fists and pushed harder. "You will be broke in a year." Those words became fuel instead of chains. Becca's presence was my anchor. After her long shifts at the hospital, she sat beside me on the couch, her tired eyes still kind. She helped me fill out applications, reminded me to eat when I wanted to skip meals, and laughed at small things just to keep my spirit from collapsing. There were nights we shared frozen pizza, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, and for the first time since Christmas, I felt warmth that had nothing to do with blood ties. Becca said once, "Families are the people who stay when everyone else walks away." That sentence stayed with me like a lantern in the dark. When the dental office offered me a receptionist position, I nearly dropped the phone in disbelief. The pay was modest, but it was a lifeline. On my first day, I wore a secondhand blouse, ironed 3 times until the wrinkles faded. The office smelled of fresh paint and disinfectant. The phones rang non-stop, and patients filled the waiting room. My fingers stumbled over the computer keyboard. My voice quivered answering calls, but I steadied myself. By the end of the week, I could smile at strangers without fear, and by the end of the month, I brought home my first paycheck. I handed Becca cash for rent and groceries, and she hugged me tight, whispering that she was proud of me. That hug meant more than any praise I had ever received from my family. Pregnancy reshaped me day by day. My body ached, my ankles swelled, and yet I walked to work with my coat straining over my belly. At the clinic, I attended appointments alone, sitting in waiting rooms with couples who held hands and shared nervous smiles. When the doctor pressed the cold wand against my stomach and the rapid heartbeat filled the room, tears spilled down my cheeks. That sound was proof that I had chosen life, proof that my dad's demand had failed. I carried a secret pride, a defiance that no one could see but me. Each kick reminded me that resilience lived inside me. When labor came, it was fierce and unrelenting. Becca rushed me to the hospital in the middle of the night, her car headlights cutting through the rain. I gripped her hand with every contraction, my screams echoing in the sterile room. Hours stretched like years, and then at last his cry broke through the air. They laid Aiden on my chest, his tiny body trembling against mine, his breaths shallow but steady. I sobbed with exhaustion and wonder, whispering promises into his ear. "You are safe, you are wanted, you are mine." In that moment, the world outside no longer existed. My dad's words lost their power. Jessica's laughter lost its sting. All that mattered was the warmth in my arms. Momhood was a battlefield I had not been trained for. Sleepless nights blurred into weary mornings. Bottles lined the counter. Diapers filled the trash. I dragged myself to work, my body aching, my mind fogged. But each time Aiden smiled, the exhaustion vanished for a heartbeat. I learned to balance bills with pennies, to cook simple meals, to stretch groceries farther than I believed possible. We lived in a small one-bedroom apartment after I saved enough to move out of Becca's place. The walls were thin neighbors loud, but it was ours. I painted Aiden's room with pale blue, hung thrift store curtains, and taped his drawings to the fridge. Pride swelled in me when I looked at that space. It was not Maple Ridge Drive, but it was a home built on truth, not pretense. Each December brought a sting. While neighbors strung lights, I felt the weight of memory. I avoided Naperville, avoided the house on Maple Ridge. Instead, I strung a modest strand across our window and let Aiden place the star on our little tree. His laughter filled the air, drowning out echoes of betrayal. We created traditions of our own. Hot cocoa in mismatched mugs, carols playing softly on the radio, quiet mornings opening gifts we had wrapped together. Aiden's eyes sparkled brighter than any ornament, and I realized joy could be remade from brokenness. The years unfolded like chapters of survival. I took night classes after putting Aiden to bed, studying administrative work, textbooks heavy in my lap while the hum of the fridge kept me company. I fought sleep to memorize medical terms, determined to build a career that would give us stability. When I finally earned my certificate and transitioned into managing a family, clinic pride surged through me. I could pay rent on time, fill our cupboards with fresh food, and buy Aiden new clothes without dread. Each step forward silenced my dad's curse a little more. Aiden grew into a boy full of questions. He asked once why we never visited our grandparents. My throat tightened as I searched for words. "They are not part of our lives," I said softly. He frowned but nodded, accepting my silence. Deep down, I vowed that he would never feel the sting of rejection that had scarred me. I poured love into every lunch I packed, every bedtime story, every cheer from the sidelines of his soccer games. My dad's house had cut me off, but I was building a new house where love was never conditional. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I replayed that Christmas. I saw my mom's eyes looking away, my sister's smile, my dad's fury. The images haunted me, yet they also fueled me. They reminded me why I fought so hard, why every small victory mattered. I knew they lived their lives without me, convinced I would fade. But with every success, I felt myself rising from the snow where he had left me. One evening, as I helped Aiden with his homework at the kitchen table, he slid a paper toward me. It was an essay about resilience. My mom taught me that even when family betrays you, you can build your own family with love and strength. My vision blurred as I read it. That essay was worth more than any inheritance, more than any reconciliation. It was proof that the cycle ended with me. The chains of betrayal had been broken. Still, the shadows lingered. There were nights I dreamed of my dad knocking on my door, demanding entry, his voice still booming. I woke with a start, heart racing, then remembered that I was no longer powerless. I was not that 17-year-old girl in the snow. I was a woman who had rebuilt a life from ashes. I was a mom, a provider, a survivor, and though questions about him flickered through my mind, I told myself they no longer mattered. Yet in the deepest corners of my heart, I knew the story was unfinished. It was a cold December night in Milwaukee when my phone began to buzz on the counter, the vibration rattling against the wood like a warning. At first I ignored it, focused on the pot of soup simmering on the stove, while Aiden sat at the table, scrolling through his homework on his laptop. But the buzzing did not stop. I wiped my hands on a towel and glanced at the screen. 37 missed calls from a number I once knew by heart. My chest tightened as if the air had been knocked out of me. The name stared back at me, bold and unrelenting. Dad. A notification flashed above the missed calls. Please come back. Only you can save me. The spoon slipped from my fingers, clattering against the floor. Aiden looked up startled. Mom, are you okay? I swallowed hard, my throat burning. I forced myself to answer. Just an old ghost trying to haunt me. He tilted his head, suspicion flickering in his eyes. The phone buzzed again, the same name lighting up the screen, and I pressed it face down on the counter. My heart hammered as if I had been transported back to that night in Naperville, the snow burning against my skin, Jessica's laughter echoing. It had been 18 years since I walked away. 18 years of silence. And now this. Sleep abandoned me that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the radiator. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my dad's face contorted in rage and heard the words that cut me from his life, dead to me. Yet now he was the one reaching across the void, begging. The hypocrisy burned. I turned onto my side, curling into myself, and wondered what had driven him to this desperation. Illness, betrayal, financial ruin. All of them were possible, but none of them erased what he had done. My son breathed steadily in the next room. His life, the very existence my dad had demanded I erase. That thought alone steadied me. The calls continued the next day. At work, my phone buzzed in my purse until I silenced it. During lunch, while the staff laughed over sandwiches, I sat quietly, the weight of those missed calls heavy on my chest. In the clinic lobby, the sound of ringing phones mingled with patient chatter, but each buzz from my pocket was different. It was a summons I did not want. When I returned home that evening, Aiden confronted me. Whoever that is, they are not stopping. I hesitated, then told him the truth. It is your granddad. His eyebrows rose. I thought he was dead. I shook my head. No, but to me he has been. For 18 years. We sat in silence for a while. Aiden finally asked, "Why is he calling now?" I admitted I did not know. Maybe he is sick. Maybe he lost everything. Maybe he has no one left. Aiden leaned back, his face thoughtful. Are you going to answer? My stomach twisted. I do not know. His eyes softened with something I had not expected. Maybe you should just once. Sometimes closure is revenge enough. His words struck me, the wisdom of youth piercing the armor I had built. That night I dreamed of Maple Ridge Drive. I saw the porch lights glittering, the table set with silverware, my mom bustling around with her apron. I saw Jessica's smirk, her voice dripping with contempt. You will be broke in a year. I saw my dad's hand on my arm, the force of the shove, the snow swallowing me whole. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, my hands clutching the sheets. The ghost of that night lived inside me. But now it had crawled out to demand attention. Days stretched into weeks, and still the calls came. Each voicemail began the same. Lauren, please, I need you. Then silence or muffled sobs. Sometimes the words were sharper. Do not ignore me. You are my daughter. Other times the voice cracked with fear. I am sick. I cannot do this alone. I deleted them all, but their echoes lingered. The anger inside me warred with a dangerous curiosity. What had reduced him, the man who once commanded every room, to a beggar on my phone? On a Saturday morning, unable to contain the storm inside me, I called Becca. We met at our old diner, the one that had once given me refuge. She slid into the booth across from me, her eyes scanning my face. Spill it, she said. I told her everything, every call, every message. She listened, hands wrapped around her coffee mug, nodding slowly. When I finished, she exhaled. He must have lost everyone else. That is the only reason he would turn to you. I bit my lip. I should feel satisfaction, but I only feel tired. She reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. You owe him nothing. Remember that. Nothing. Later that evening, Aiden joined me on the couch. He had been quiet all day, but now he leaned against me. Mom, I do not know him, but maybe this is about you more than him. Maybe it is your chance to end it on your terms. I kissed the top of his head, my throat tight. He did not know how much that meant to me to hear that from my child. I had carried the weight of rejection for so long. Maybe he was right. Closure. My own ending. I tried to imagine facing my dad, his hair grayer, his body weaker, the arrogance perhaps stripped away by time. I wondered if he still lived in that house on Maple Ridge Drive, if the lights still shone bright on Christmas, or if the windows stayed dark. I pictured walking up that driveway again, hearing the crunch of gravel under my boots. My stomach clenched. Could I stand before him without trembling? Could I look into his eyes without drowning in old wounds? The following week, I received a letter in the mail. The envelope was thin, the handwriting shaky. My hands shook as I tore it open. The words inside were scrawled uneven. I need you. Jessica is gone. Your mom cannot help me. I have no one left. Please come back. Only you can save me. My knees weakened as I sank into a chair. Jessica is gone, the golden child who had triumphed in my exile, the sister who had laughed at my ruin. If she had abandoned him, then truly the empire had crumbled. I pressed the letter against my chest, eyes burning. For 18 years he had been a ghost, and now he was flesh again, fragile and desperate. That night I sat with Aiden, the letter between us. His eyes scanned the words, his brow furrowed. He is really begging, Mom. I nodded. He says Jessica is gone. Aiden frowned. After everything, he still has the nerve to ask you. I whispered, maybe that is the point. He has nothing left. Aiden's voice sharpened. That is his problem, not yours. I smiled sadly. You sound like me 18 years ago. He hugged me, then his arms strong around my shoulders. Whatever you decide, I am with you. I lay awake long after Aiden had gone to bed. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I stared at the ceiling, the letter resting on the nightstand. The man who had cast me into the snow now begged for my return. The symmetry of it twisted inside me, sharp as glass. I thought of my mom, her silence. I thought of Jessica, her laughter. And I thought of myself, that 17-year-old girl shivering in the snow, clutching her belly, determined to survive. That girl had grown into a woman who had built a life. Now the question pressed against my chest. Did I want to answer? Did I want to return to the place that had once banished me? Did I want to hear his voice in person, to see what remained of his power? The buzzing of my phone broke the silence again. I reached for it, then let it ring. For now, I was not ready. But something inside me whispered that the time was coming. I could not bring myself to answer his calls, but curiosity gnawed at me like a wound that refused to close. Each voicemail played back in my mind. Each shaky letter in his note left me wondering what had reduced my dad to this state. I tried to bury myself in work and cooking dinner for Aiden, in reading books late at night, but the question followed me everywhere. Who was he now? The man who once threw me into the snow had been untouchable, a king in his own kingdom. If he was reaching for me, something had cracked in that kingdom. I needed to see for myself, even if from a distance. On a gray afternoon, I drove down to Naperville, my hands tight on the steering wheel. The highway stretched ahead, lined with bare trees. My stomach twisted as I crossed into the town where my life had shattered. Familiar street names flashed by: Ogden Avenue, Maple Ridge Drive. They were markers of a past I had abandoned, and yet here I was, circling back. I parked near a coffee shop where I had once studied for exams in high school, the same shop that now looked smaller and worn. I sat inside, ordered a plain coffee, and scanned the people around me. Gossip traveled fast in towns like this. If my dad had truly fallen, someone would be talking. It did not take long. At the next table, two older women whispered over their cups. Parker's company is finished. Can you believe it? He lost millions. His daughter ran off with money too, left him drowning. The other shook her head. I always said he was too proud. Now look at him, sick and alone. Their words crawled under my skin. My chest tightened. Jessica, the favored one. Had she betrayed him too? The irony tasted bitter and sharp. I left the shop before my shaking hands could spill the coffee. I drove past the old Parker Building group office. The sign was faded, the parking lot empty. I remembered the grand opening when I was a child, the pride in his voice when he cut the ribbon. He had built an empire with his name on it, and now weeds grew through the cracks in the pavement. I parked across the street and sat in silence, watching the empty windows reflect the cloudy sky. For the first time, I felt the shift. The man who had declared me dead to him was facing a death of his own, not of the body yet, but of reputation and control. I thought of my mom. I had not spoken to her since that night, her silence sealing my exile as much as his words. Was she still in that house, tending to him, still obeying his every command? Or had she left too? The questions pressed against me until I picked up my phone and dialed Becca. I need to know more. She sighed, her voice steady as always. Let me ask around. Nurses hear things. Give me time. I thanked her, relief flooding me that I was not carrying this weight alone. That night, Becca called back. Word is he is sick. Heart problems. He has been in and out of Edward Hospital, and yes, Jessica cleaned him out. took money from him for investments, and disappeared when everything collapsed. I sat on the couch, Aiden's laughter drifting from his room as he played his guitar. The sound clashed with the storm in my chest. I whispered, "So it was not me who ruined him." Becca's voice was firm. "No, Lauren, you did not ruin him. He did that himself." I closed my eyes, tears sliding down my face. For years, I had carried the weight of rejection as though it had been my fault. Now the cracks revealed the truth. He had chosen pride over love, and now pride had abandoned him. Days later, I returned to Naperville, unable to resist seeing the house that haunted me. Maple Ridge Drive looked smaller than I remembered, the trees taller. The neighbors' homes updated with new siding and fresh paint. And there it was, number 18, standing like a ghost. The shutters were chipped, the lawn overgrown, the driveway cracked. My chest ached as memories surged. The Christmas lights, the polished oak table, the shove into the snow. I parked down the street, my hands trembling. From a distance, I could see the curtains drawn, the windows dark. It was not the kingdom of light and laughter I remembered. It was a tomb. I sat there until dusk headlights passing by, my breath fogging the windshield. I thought about walking up to the door, knocking and seeing his face. But fear rooted me. What if he saw me and sneered, the old rage still alive? What if he begged and I felt pity? Both possibilities terrified me. I started the car and drove away, heart pounding. The next day at work, I found it hard to focus. Patients' names blurred on the screen, phones rang endlessly. But my mind replayed the image of that house. That night, Aiden noticed. "You are somewhere else, Mom." I nodded. I went back to Naperville. His eyes widened. "Did you see him?" "No, just the house." He frowned. "Do you want to see him?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "I am not ready." He studied me carefully. "You always told me running from fear gives it power. Maybe facing him is the only way to take it back." His words pierced me. My son, born out of rejection, is now giving me courage. I dreamed of Jessica that night. In my dream, she sat in a lavish living room, champagne glass in hand, smirking as always. But then the walls cracked, water flooding in, her laughter turning into screams. I woke with sweat on my forehead, realizing that even in dreams her betrayal had found him. My dad had lost his golden child. Now he wanted the one he had thrown away. The following week, I heard from another old acquaintance, a former neighbor who still lived on Maple Ridge. She told me Mom was rarely seen. She walked to the pharmacy, sometimes her shoulders stooped, her eyes distant. Dad was spotted less and less. Rumors of debt collectors, of unpaid bills, of shouting matches at night. The empire was not only cracked, it was crumbling to dust. I hung up the phone, a heavy sadness filling me. I had dreamed of revenge for years, but seeing the reality left me empty. He was already punished, not by my hand, but by life itself. Still, a part of me burned. He had begged me with those words, "Please come back, only you can save me." Why me? Why the daughter he had disowned? Did he believe I was the only one who remembered the man he used to be? Did he think my silence meant forgiveness? The questions swirled until I could not hold them in. I told Aiden one evening. He wants me back because he has nothing left. Jessica took his pride, his money, his friends. Mom took her silence. And I am the last. Aiden frowned, his voice sharp. "That is not love, Mom. That is desperation." I nodded. "I know. But desperation can be powerful." The winter deepened, snow falling thick on Milwaukee, and I found myself standing at the window watching the flakes drift down. I thought of the night he had thrown me into the snow, how the cold had seared into my bones. Now the snow was quiet, soft, falling gently. I wrapped my arms around myself and whispered, "I survived. I am not the girl you left behind." The phone buzzed again on the table. I let it ring. Not tonight, but soon. I stood at the edge of Maple Ridge Drive with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might echo across the neighborhood. The air was sharp, cutting into my lungs as I took one last look at the house I had avoided for 18 years. Number 18 loomed ahead, once proud and bright, now tired and dark with shutters sagging and the lawn untended. My boots crunched on the icy pavement as I walked toward the door. Every step was a battle between fear and resolve. I raised my hand, knocked, and for a moment I considered running back to my car. The door opened slowly and there he was, my dad. He was not the man I remembered. The towering figure with a booming voice and iron grip had been replaced by a man with sunken eyes and shoulders slumped under the weight of years. His hair, once thick and dark, was thin and gray, and his skin sagged in folds. The shock of seeing him weakened startled me. For a long breath, neither of us spoke. He finally whispered my name, his voice hoarse and unfamiliar. "Lauren." I did not move. He reached out a trembling hand but stopped halfway as if afraid to touch me. "Please come in." The word sounded foreign in his mouth, like he was unused to asking, to pleading. I stepped inside my chest tight with the weight of memories. The house smelled of dust and stale air, not the polished wood and holiday spices I remembered. The photographs on the wall had faded frames crooked. The oak table where it had all happened sat under a dull light, scratches marring its surface. I stopped in the doorway, unable to cross into the room where he had once cast me out. My dad closed the door gently and leaned against it, his hand pressed to his chest as if he could not catch his breath. "Only you can save me," he said, again his voice trembling. I forced my own voice to steady. 18 years ago you told me I was dead to you. You dragged me into the snow and shut the door." He winced as though my words were physical blows. "I know. I was wrong. I was proud, stubborn. I thought I was protecting the family." My anger flared. "Protecting? You destroyed it. You destroyed me." His eyes filled with tears. "Jessica betrayed me. She stole from me. She left me. Your mom turned away. I have nothing left. Only you." The bitterness in me surged. "You had me once and you threw me away." He slumped into a chair at the table, his hands shaking. I saw the tremor in his fingers, the fragility of his frame. He looked small, almost pitiful. For a moment I felt an unexpected pang of pity, but it was buried under years of pain. I stayed standing, my hands gripping the back of a chair, knuckles white. "Why now? Why after everything?" He shook his head. "Because you are strong. You survived what I thought would break you. You are the only one who can stand by me now." I stared at him, the irony cutting deep. The daughter he had disowned had become his last hope. Silence filled the room. I could hear the hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen, the creak of the floorboards under our weight. My dad's breathing was shallow, labored. I remembered the doctor's words through Becca. Heart problems, he was sick. I wondered if each breath was a reminder of his mortality. He finally looked at me with eyes that no longer carried authority but desperation. "I need your forgiveness." My throat tightened. "Forgiveness is not yours to demand. You gave up that right when you left me in the snow." He bowed his head, tears sliding down his cheeks. "I was wrong. I see it now. But it is too late." I thought of Aiden, of the nights I had worked myself to exhaustion, of the laughter that had replaced silence in our home. I thought of Jessica's smirk, her cruel prediction, "You will be broke in a year." I thought of my mom's silence, her eyes looking away while I was dragged into the cold. The memories swirled until I felt dizzy. My dad reached across the table, his hand trembling in the space between us. "Please, Lauren, do not let me die alone." My chest burned with anger and sorrow. "You let me live alone. You left me to face the world without family. Now you want me to give you what you denied me." He broke then, his body shaking with sobs, his face buried in his hands. The sight of it unsettled me. I had imagined revenge for years, imagined him begging, imagined his downfall. Now that it was real, it did not bring the satisfaction I expected. It only left me hollow. I turned and walked toward the door, my boots clicking on the wood. His voice followed me, ragged and desperate. "Do not go, please." I stopped with my hand on the knob, the memories of that night pressing against me like shadows. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I came to hear the truth, not to save you." His sobs grew louder as I stepped outside. The cold air struck my face sharp and clean. I walked down the driveway, each step echoing in the silence. In the car, my hands gripped the steering wheel, trembling. I had seen him broken, stripped of pride and power. I had heard the words I had waited nearly 2 decades to hear. But I felt no victory, no closure, only the weight of choice. Did I let him suffer, or did I step back into the fire? The headlights lit up Maple Ridge Drive as I pulled away, the house shrinking in the mirror. My chest ached with unanswered questions, my mind tangled in memories. The road stretched ahead, dark and uncertain. For now, I chose to keep driving. I had barely left Naperville behind when the image of my dad's face followed, me streaked with tears and hollowed by regret, his voice cracking as he begged me not to go. I told myself I would not turn back, not yet. But the past had its claws in me again. That night, as I tried to settle into my own bed, I kept hearing not his pleas but the silence of another. My mom's silence. Eileen Parker had once been the heart of our household, bustling from kitchen to living room, smoothing arguments, refilling glasses, making sure appearances were kept. But the one moment when her voice might have saved me, she said nothing. She turned away. That silence cut deeper than the shove into the snow. Now, years later, I found myself needing to see her, to ask questions that had burned in me for nearly 2 decades. I drove back a week later, not to the house, but to the small pharmacy on Aurora Road where I had heard she worked part-time. It was a quiet place tucked between a laundromat and a pizza shop. The windows were clean but bare. A bell jingled faintly when I pushed open the door. the scent of antiseptic mixed with faint lavender from a candle on the counter, and there she was. My mom stood behind the register, her shoulders slumped, glasses sliding down her nose as she counted pills into a small white bottle. She looked older than I had prepared myself for. Her hair, once carefully styled, was now pulled back in a loose bun streaked with gray. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked, and her back seemed smaller somehow, as if the years had pressed her down. For a moment I could not speak. She lifted her head, her eyes catching mine, and the bottle nearly slipped from her hands. "Lauren," she whispered. The sound of my name from her lips shook something inside me. She walked slowly around the counter, uncertain as if I might vanish. Her hands fluttered, then clasped together in front of her. "Can we talk?" I nodded, my throat dry. We walked across the street to a diner, the same one she used to take Jessica and me to for milkshakes after school. We sat in a booth by the window, silence stretching between us. She stirred her coffee, though she never drank it, eyes darting to me and away again. I finally broke the silence. "You watched. You did nothing." My voice was steady but cold. She flinched, her eyes filling with tears. "I was weak. I was afraid." The words stung. She went on, her voice shaking. "Your dad had control over everything. Over me. Over what I could say. Over what I could do. If I had spoken, he would have punished me." I stared at her, fury rising. "Punished you. He punished me. He punished your grandson before he was even born." She covered her mouth, sobs shaking her shoulders. "I know. I have thought of that night every day since. You were braver than I ever was. You walked away. I stayed and died slowly inside that house." I leaned back, studying her face. Lines etched deep around her eyes and mouth. A lifetime of fear had carved them there. I asked her what had happened after I left. She told me in halting words. The house grew quieter. Your dad ruled it like a fortress, but without you, something cracked. Jessica grew closer to him, basked in his favor until she learned to use it. I saw her take money from him, saw her manipulate, but I said nothing. He would not have listened anyway. When he found out she had taken everything, it destroyed him. She pressed a napkin to her eyes. "He is sick now. He has nothing. And still he calls for you." I swallowed hard. "Why me? Why the daughter he cast out?" She shook her head. "Because you are strong. He knows it now. He cannot admit it, but he knows." I clenched my fists in my lap. "It is too late. He left me in the snow. He chose pride over me." She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "I know. And I am sorry for the silence. You deserved a mom who would fight for you. All I gave you was my cowardice." Her eyes begged for forgiveness, but my heart resisted. I pulled my hand back slowly. "You were the only one who could have stopped him." She lowered her gaze, whispering, "I failed you." The diner filled with the hum of conversation, the clink of plates. I felt a strange dissonance, as if the world outside kept moving while inside the booth time had stopped. For a moment I pitied her. She had lived in fear, endured humiliation, and lost everything too. Yet pity did not erase the scars of abandonment. When she finally looked up again, her eyes were desperate. "Please, Lauren, see him one more time. He may not have long." The request lodged in my chest like a stone. I shook my head. "I do not know if I can." She reached for me again, her voice breaking. "Not for him. For you. You need to end this. You need to know you were never what he said." That night I told Aiden about the meeting. He listened quietly, his eyes sharp with questions. Grandma watched and stayed silent. He said it flatly, not as a question. I nodded. She admitted it. He crossed his arms, anger flashing in his face. "Why forgive her? Why forgive him? They chose themselves. They left you." I pulled him close. "I do not know if forgiveness is even the right word. Maybe it is about freeing myself, not them." He frowned, struggling with the idea. "I do not want you hurt again." I promised him softly I will not let them ruin me twice. Lying awake that night, I thought of my mom's face, the sorrow etched there, the regret heavy in her voice. I wondered if she had truly envied me, as she claimed, envied the courage it took to walk away. I wondered if she felt relief now that Jessica had betrayed him, that his power had collapsed, or if she still lived in fear even in his weakness. The questions circled until dawn, leaving me hollow. I went back to see her again a week later, unable to shake the conversation. She sat with me in the same booth, her hands clutching a cup of tea. She told me more this time. About the nights when my dad berated her. About the mornings she woke with dread. About the times she tried to protect Jessica and me but failed. I saw then how deep the cracks had run, how long the cycle of control had lasted. My heart softened just slightly. I asked her why she never left. She stared out the window. "Because I believed I was nothing without him. Until I saw you survive." That broke me. I envied your freedom even as I mourned it. Her words rattled into me as I drove home. All my life I had wanted my mom to fight for me. Now I saw she could barely fight for herself. That did not erase the pain, but it shifted something. It made me realize the chains had bound all of us differently. She urged me again to see him. I told her I would think about it. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table with Aiden. He strummed his guitar softly while I stared at the faded letter from my dad. The words blurred. Please come back. Only you can save me. My mom's voice echoed. Not for him, for you. I thought of closure, of ending a story that had ruled my life for too long. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed to face him again, not as the girl in the snow, but as the woman who had survived. The snow began to fall outside our window, soft and steady, the same as it had that night years ago. I pressed my forehead to the glass, whispering to myself, I am not ready, but I will be. The past was circling back, demanding a reckoning, and I knew soon I would have to answer. I found myself driving toward Aurora on a gray morning, the sky low and heavy as if it shared my dread. My mom had told me where Jessica was living now, a rundown apartment complex off East New York Street, far from the polished suburbs where she once strutted like royalty. I gripped the wheel, my stomach knotted. For years I had pictured this meeting, imagining facing her after the smug laughter, after her words that cut me as deep as our dad's hand. You will be broke in a year. Now she was the one who had fallen, but the thought brought me no joy, only a complicated ache. The complex was shabby, the paint peeling, broken blinds hanging in the windows. I parked and sat in the car staring at the building. Memories of her perfect hair, her polished nails, her expensive clothes clashed with the sight before me. I climbed the stairs, each creak of the metal steps echoing like a drumbeat in my chest. I knocked on her door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened a crack. Jessica's eyes appeared bloodshot and wary. When she saw me, her mouth twisted. So you came to gloat. She pulled the door wider. I stepped inside. The apartment smelled of stale beer and cheap perfume. Empty bottles lined the counter, papers scattered across the coffee table. Jessica slumped into a chair, her hair messy, her once flawless makeup smeared. She wore a wrinkled sweatshirt instead of designer clothes. She grabbed a glass from the table and poured herself a drink, her hand shaking slightly. Look at you, she said bitterly, all put together. Bet you love seeing me like this. I stayed standing, my arms crossed. I came because I needed to hear it from you. Did you really take everything from him? She smirked, though it faltered. I took what I could. He gave it to me willingly. He wanted me to carry the torch, to be the heir, but it was never enough. And when I failed, I left him to choke on the ashes. Her words were sharp but empty, her pride cracked. I remembered her sitting at Dad's side, smiling as he praised her, dismissing me, the golden child. Now she sat in a dim apartment, broke and bitter. I asked her why. She shrugged, lighting a cigarette with trembling fingers. Because that is who he is. He raises you up only to break you down. You should know. He used you as his scapegoat and me as his star. Until I wasn't. Her laugh was hollow. Turns out I am the broke one now. I sat across from her, the old rivalry heavy between us. You told me I would not last a year. I lasted 18. She met my eyes, her smirk fading. I was cruel. I thought I had won. But look at us now. You have a life, I have ruins. She inhaled deeply, smoke curling around her face. He is calling you now, isn't he? My silence was enough. She laughed again, bitter. Of course he is. I was his perfect child and I betrayed him. Now he wants the one he threw away. That is his last trick. You are his last pawn. Her words rattled me. I wanted to dismiss them, but there was truth in her tone. She leaned forward, her eyes fierce. If you go back, he will ruin you again. That is all he knows how to do. Do not think you are different. He will use your pity until you are empty. I swallowed hard. Why are you warning me? She crushed the cigarette into an ashtray. Because I know what it feels like to be used up, and because maybe I owe you something. She leaned back, her voice quieter. Maybe I always did. I studied her face once, so polished, now raw with regret. I thought of the girl she had been laughing at my pain, reveling in her role. I thought of the woman she was now broken by the same dad she once defended. I felt a strange blend of satisfaction and sorrow. She was right. We had both been pawns, just in different ways. But I had escaped and built something. She had clung to him until she drowned. I left her apartment in silence, the door clicking shut behind me. The cold air hit my face as I walked back to the car. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, her words echoing. He will ruin you again. I drove back to Milwaukee with the city lights blurring in my vision. Aiden was waiting at home, his guitar in his lap. How did it go? He asked gently. I sat beside him, pulling the letter from my pocket. She admitted it. She took everything. She left him. He frowned. And now he wants you. I nodded. Yes, he wants me. Aiden shook his head. Then maybe it is not about what he wants anymore. Maybe it is about what you need. That night I could not sleep. Jessica's face haunted me, proud and broken, her warning sharp. My dad's voice lingered in my mind, begging, "Please come back. Only you can save me." I stood by the window, the snow falling steady outside. The cold pressed against the glass, familiar and relentless. My mom's plea echoed too. Not for him, for you. I closed my eyes, whispering to the darkness. I have to decide. Not tomorrow. Not tonight, but soon. I drove back to Naperville on a Saturday when the air was brittle and the sky the color of ash. Each mile felt heavier than the last. The closer I came to Maple Ridge Drive, the more my chest tightened. I had promised myself I would not go back again, yet something stronger than my own will pulled me toward that house. Maybe it was my mom's words. Maybe it was the letter that still rested in my purse. Or maybe it was the look in Jessica's eyes when she admitted her own ruin. Whatever it was, I found myself turning onto the street I once called home, the street where everything had ended. Number 18 stood at the bend like a shadow of its former self. The once manicured lawn was patchy with dead grass and patches of snow. The driveway cracked and littered with salt stains. The shutters hung crooked paint peeling, and the curtains were drawn tight. This was not the house of laughter and lights I had once known. It was a husk. I sat in the car for a long time, the engine humming beneath me, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles ached. Finally, I turned off the ignition and stepped out into the cold. The crunch of gravel beneath my boots echoed louder than it should have. I walked up the driveway, every step a battle with memory. I saw flashes of that Christmas night, the porch lights gleaming, my dad's hand gripping my arm, the snow biting into my back as I landed. I shook the image away and knocked on the door. There was no answer at first. I knocked again. Slowly, the door creaked open, and there he was, framed by the dim light inside. He looked worse than the last time. His frame seemed smaller, his eyes sunken deeper, his skin pale. He wore a sweater that hung loose, and his hand clutched the doorframe as if it alone kept him upright. His voice cracked. "Lauren." I said nothing. He stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in." Against every instinct, I crossed the threshold. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of mildew and something faintly sour. Dust coated the furniture, and cobwebs stretched across the corners of the ceiling. I walked past the entryway and into the living room. The oak table still stood, but its shine was gone, scratches and stains marring its surface. The family portraits hung crooked glass cracked on one of them. I paused before one picture. It was me and Jessica at ages 8 and 11, both smiling in matching dresses. My dad's hand rested on Jessica's shoulder. Mine was empty. I turned away, swallowing the bitterness. He shuffled into the room behind me and lowered himself onto the couch with a groan. His breathing was shallow, his hands trembling. He gestured weakly for me to sit. I stayed standing. "You wanted me here. Now I'm here. What do you want?" His eyes filled with tears, his voice soft. "I need your help. I am sick. I cannot manage this house, this life alone." I shook my head. "You managed well enough when you cast me out." He winced, clutching his chest as if my words were physical blows. "I know. I regret it every day. I was wrong. I chose pride. I chose appearances. And I lost everything." His words hung in the air. I studied him, searching for the man I remembered. The man whose voice could silence a room. He was gone. In his place was a broken man, trembling, begging. For years I had wanted this moment, imagining it bringing me satisfaction. Instead, it left me hollow. I crossed my arms. "You want me to forgive you because you are weak now." He shook his head. "No. I want you to forgive me because I was wrong. Because I see now what I did to you, to your child." My throat tightened at the mention of Aiden. "You never cared about him." "You wanted him gone." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "And you proved me wrong. He is your strength. You are stronger than I ever was." I felt the room close in around me. My dad, who once demanded obedience, was admitting failure. I wanted to scream, to rage, to tell him he deserved every ounce of pain. Instead, I stood frozen, my heart pounding. Why now? Why me? His voice was barely a whisper. "Because you survived. Because you lived. Jessica took everything and left me. Your mom cannot save me. You are all I have left." I shook my head slowly. "That is not love. That is desperation." He broke then, his body shaking with sobs, his hands covering his face. The sound was raw, unfamiliar. I turned away, pacing the room, my eyes catching on the faded photographs. The dust, the shadows. This was the house that had once been a kingdom, now a tomb. I whispered. You destroyed me, and now you want me to save you. His sobs quieted and his voice came again, weak. Yes, because only you can. I thought of my mom, her confession in the diner, her regret. I thought of Jessica's bitterness in that dim apartment, her warning not to let him ruin me again. I thought of Aiden's steady eyes, his words about closure. My chest ached with the weight of it all. I turned back to my dad. I came to hear the truth. And I heard it. But I did not come to save you. His face crumpled, his body folding into itself. Please, he whispered, do not leave me like this. I walked to the door, my hand on the knob. I paused, my voice trembling. You left me in the snow. Now you can sit in the silence you created. The cold air rushed at me as I stepped outside. I closed the door behind me, his sobs muffled by the wood. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the icy night, my heart pounding. I walked down the driveway slowly, each step heavy, the house looming behind me. I reached my car, slid inside, and sat with my hands gripping the wheel. My reflection stared back at me in the rearview mirror, eyes wide, face pale. I whispered to myself, do I let him suffer, or do I step back into the fire? The question echoed in the silence as the snow began to fall, soft and relentless, blanketing the world around me. A year later, the snow fell again, soft and steady, blanketing Milwaukee in silence. I stood at the window of our apartment, a string of lights glowing warmly around the frame, their reflections casting a golden hue across the glass. Aiden sat on the couch behind me, taller now, his guitar resting on his lap as he tuned each string carefully. The sound was gentle, steady, and it filled the room with a peace I had never known growing up. I watched the snow drift down and thought of how far we had come. For the first time in years, I did not think of Maple Ridge Drive with dread. I thought of it as a place that no longer had power over me. The last time I had seen my dad, he was slumped on that couch, his voice breaking as he begged me not to let him die alone. I had told him the truth, that my love had died in the snow 18 years before. I had promised only not to let him starve, and I kept that promise. I did not move back, I did not forgive, but I sent help through my mom. Groceries arrived at his door each week. A nurse checked in from the clinic where I worked. He never called me again, and I never returned. When the news came months later that he had passed quietly in that house, I felt no victory, only a strange emptiness. It was not revenge that settled in my heart, but release. The man who once ruled everything had left the world in silence, and I remained standing. My mom called me the day he was gone. Her voice was soft, almost tender. He is at peace now. I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone pressed to my ear. Maybe he is. She whispered, thank you for coming back when you do. You gave me courage I did not have. I closed my eyes, hearing the quiver in her tone. For the first time, she spoke to me not as a shadow of my dad, but as a woman who had found her own fragile freedom. We spoke for a long time about the years lost, about the days ahead. I did not tell her everything was forgiven, because it was not, but I told her we could begin again in small steps. That was enough. Jessica never called. I did not expect her to. She had disappeared into her own ruin, her choices catching up to her. I thought of her sometimes, the warning in her voice, the bitterness that came from being used and discarded. We were both broken children of the same house, but I had chosen a different path. I had chosen to survive, to build, to love. She had chosen pride until it devoured her. I wished her no harm, but I could not save her either. That chapter was closed. In our apartment life unfolded with a gentler rhythm. I worked long days at the clinic managing the staff and keeping the place running. Patients came and went, some smiling, some frightened. But I found satisfaction in the work. Each paycheck reminded me of the nights I had gone hungry, and each bill paid felt like a triumph. Aiden grew stronger, taller, his voice deeper. He practiced guitar each night, filling the apartment with melodies that lifted the heaviness from my chest. Sometimes we sat together at the table, homework and paperwork spread out between us, and I marveled at the quiet joy of those moments. No shouting, no cold stares, no fear, just us. One evening, Aiden handed me a paper from school. It was another essay, this time about heroes. He had written about me. My mom showed me that survival is not about revenge. It is about building something better. I read the words slowly, tears welling in my eyes. That was the closure I had been searching for. Not my dad's regret, not Jessica's fall, not even my mom's apology. It was the knowledge that I had broken the cycle, that my son would never carry the weight I had carried. The chain of silence, control, and cruelty ended with me. The first Christmas after my dad's death, I lit our tree with Aiden. We placed each ornament carefully, some handmade, some from thrift stores, all precious. When he lifted the star to the top, I felt the warmth of victory, not the sharpness of revenge, but the quiet strength of survival. We sat on the couch, hot cocoa steaming in our hands, and watched the lights twinkle. Outside, the snow fell just as it had 18 years ago. But this time, I was inside, safe, warm, and loved. I whispered to myself, for the first time in 18 years, I am free. I shared my story slowly, first with friends, then with others who asked why I had been away from my family so long. Each time I told it, the pain loosened its grip. I learned that many carried scars of betrayal, of toxic parents, of families that had turned their backs. They nodded as I spoke, their own eyes filling with recognition. I realized then that telling the story was part of healing, part of reclaiming what had been taken. And so I tell it now, not to dwell in bitterness, but to remind anyone listening that survival is possible. Betrayal does not have to be the end. You can build again. You can choose dignity over destruction. I am not the girl who was thrown into the snow. I am the woman who stood back up. I am the mom who raised a child in love, the worker who built a career from scraps, the survivor who broke the silence. That is my revenge, that is my victory. And if you have ever been cast out, betrayed, or silenced, know this: you are not powerless. You can rise. You can write your own ending. If you have followed me through this journey, thank you for listening. Tell me, what would you have done if it were you standing at that door after 18 years? Would you have walked back in, or would you have turned away? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, if it made you remember your own strength, please like and subscribe so you will not miss the next story. Your voice matters here, your presence matters. Together we can remind each other that survival is the truest form of revenge.